Hello and welcome. I'm Catherine Bramkamp, and this is our three-part mini course on how to dance with your muse. You're going to work through creative blocks, generate new ideas, and schedule inspiration. So welcome and thank you for coming over and checking this out. So the first course today is schedule your inspiration, which sounds a little crazy, but we're going to walk through it so that you understand that you can do any piece of your writing at any time as long as it's the right time for you. I'll explain. So, oftentimes when we think of inspiration, we think that, or we have a vision of an author or a poet or a composer, and they're walking up and down the lovely bucolic trail, or they're in the woods, and they are suddenly inspired, like a bolt from the blue. Well, the muse is not in charge of bolts from the blue. That's Thor's job. And secondly, that's not really the whole story. It sounds good, doesn't it? And then you're frustrated when it doesn't happen to you, because it doesn't happen that way. Inspiration comes from a lot of groundwork that we lay and that we consistently show up to do. As we do that groundwork, then that will lay the path for a faster trail, or a smoother path for inspiration to, quote, hit. So, how do you get inspired, particularly when we have so much else going on in our lives? And the biggest problem that we have in writing, in composing, in poetry, in photography, any creative work that you're trying to create, any of that gets pushed aside because we have long lists of shoulds and long lists of stuff we gotta do. So let's talk about both of those challenges, the shoulds and the busy. So let's talk about shoulds. I don't know about you, but my mother subscribes to Should Monthly. It's a packed periodical, very big, kind of looks like Vogue's September issue. And it has pages and pages and pages of stuff we should be doing. And it can be anything from great ideas for a dozen original holiday cards you can make in your spare time, or beautiful gifts that you can handmade to give to your second cousins twice removed, or we should go visit those boring people, or we should be wearing our best clothes to go to that particular event, or we should do this dinner at this time with these obnoxious relatives. It goes on and on and on. And the challenge is that every time you think of a should, you automatically do it, even though oftentimes you couldn't tell anybody exactly why you should do something. And should is different from want, and it's different from need. These are just the shoulds. So let's look at your should list, because shoulds can suck the creative life out of your day and out of your life if you're not careful. And I want to stop you from that, because once you look at your shoulds, you're going to free up a lot of time to do the wants and the needs and the necessary. So here's how to manage your shoulds. Spend some time. And when I say spend some time, you're going to spend a couple of days on this. You're going to write you're going to journal, because journaling is a really great space for all of this. You're going to write all the shoulds. You're going to record your shoulds. You're going to wake up in the morning and think, what are the shoulds that I need to do? I should do A, B, C. And I have eliminated a lot of my shoulds. So some of mine will be, I should belong to Rotary. I should be volunteering. I should call my mother twice a week. I should be feeding the poor. I should be doing, you can see? So Write down all of your shoulds, all of your shoulds. And it may take you a couple of days. Even that is going to be illuminating, right? Write all that down. Now, take as long or as little as you want on this. Sometimes it can take a few days more, but this is worth it because you're freeing up time. And it's not like carving out time. I mean, freeing up time. Think of taking time out of that should cage, letting it go, and now you've got space to pack in something that's more interesting to you. So let's talk about the shoulds. Write about each should. Let's go back to like a service club you belong to, for instance. Sometimes we start clubs or we belong to something because at the time it was a really good idea. And think of shoulds that way because there's a lot in our life that if you look at those events closely, you will discover that it was a great idea at the time. It's okay to outgrow great ideas. It's okay to say, not feeling it anymore. I mean, do you still belong, even though your children have graduated from high school, do you still belong to the PTA? Probably not, but it was a great idea at the time. So it's okay to advance out of events that initially worked for you and maybe no longer. So write about each one. Journal a little bit, 10 minutes a day. And we talked about how to journal. So show up at that consistent time that we talked about in our first series and write about that should. Write that out. The more you write about it, the more you're going to be able to question, why am I hand making Christmas gifts? Why am I even giving Christmas gifts? And it can be that intense and maybe that's startling, right? Write them all down. Look at what you have and see if there aren't maybe two. I'm not going to ask you to give up everything because that's hard to do. Maybe there's two things, two activities that you can say, not feeling the love, not feeling it. I cannot do this should, and instead I'm going to write on my book. I'm going to write the poems I always wanted to. I'm going to go take that painting class. I'm going to be creative in that space of time. I'm not going to waste it, and I'm not going to fill it up with another should. I'm going to save it and keep it and put in something that's more interesting. Now, the next set of activities that we love to do, particularly Americans, is that we are busy. That's a problem. It is very hard to create when you're very, very busy, as you probably noticed. Here's my favorite saying. I go into a party and I talk with somebody who's my age, probably a little younger now, to be honest. And I say, how are you doing? And her response, almost guaranteed, is, oh, I'm just crazy busy. Crazy busy. Just think of that. It's a badge of honor. We should have little sashes, like in Miss America contest. Hi, Miss Crazy Busy. Tell us what your schedule is, Joan. Well, I get up at 5 in the morning and I don't stop working until 9:30 at night. And that's only because my oldest child finally went to sleep and the dog was already put out and the dishes were washed. And. Do the same thing you did with the shoulds. Why are you crazy busy? Why is that important? Sometimes we get a lot of satisfaction and a lot of kudos and a lot of feedback about being crazy busy. So when you say, oh, I'm crazy busy, and people say, oh my goodness, you are fabulous. How wonderful is that? You don't hear if you say, oh, well, I just loafed around all day and was inspired to go paint a tree and it took me all afternoon to get my head around it. No one says, yay, good for you, right? They kind of give you this look like, how come you're not crazy busy? Resist this. This is your opportunity to be that artist who's not crazy busy. And crazy busy doesn't work for artists. Artists need space. We need time, and we need to be able to consistently show up for the muse so that we can start channeling things that are for us, that are an expression of our creativity and our life. The more creative we are, the more satisfying our life is going to be, and the better legacy we leave. I don't imagine that in the next 20 years we're going to see a lot of tombstones that say, "Here lies Joan, she was crazy busy." Because crazy busy is often for other people, it's not necessarily for you. And we want to create an environment and a creative space that's about you, not about anybody else. So look at your crazy busy list. Write about it, do the same thing. Write it out. Write about why you're busy. What are you doing that's making you busy? What would happen if you stopped? What would happen if someone else did it? What would happen if you hired it out? Consider some of those options. It doesn't all have to be you. You can do all sorts of other things. You have the talent, you have the capacity. You don't need to be the one in charge of folding the laundry. And maybe the laundry doesn't get folded. That's okay. That doesn't go on anybody's tombstone either. It doesn't even hit your permanent record. So your job as a creative is to make and schedule those inspirational times with the Muse. And you do that by first freeing up your crazy busy should schedule. Free that up and then start showing up at consistent times. I show up first thing in the morning. I find that works the best, and we talked about that in the journaling class. Show up, but maybe you show up at noon because you just ditched a service club program or a service club membership, and they always met at noon every week. And maybe you use that time to do your creative work. That's what you want to do. You want to switch it out. The more consistent you are when you show up for the Muse, the more likely she is to swing by and deliver some serious inspiration so that you can start your dream project and become the creative person that you really, really need to be.